Okay, it is saying that we are going live. I will do the introduction just as soon as it says we're good. And then I'm going to set up a recording as well. And it looks like, and we are live stream for Freedom Friday. And I'm also setting it up to, oh yes, we're good. Hello, everyone. It is Facebook Freedom Friday. It's also going to be recorded to our YouTube page and shared on all the links we shared on our social media. And Chris took the time, Mr. Chris Lord is just got so much wisdom and so much playfulness and so much leadership background that he was a perfect guest for our Freedom Friday. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Coach April Ballestero. I am the owner and founder of One Light Ahead. I get to be a strategic leadership coach as well, and I get to help people discover how to own their leadership, how to be purposeful in defeating their mindset, or defeating destructive mindset, and owning how their actions, their thoughts, and their behaviors align so that they truly love what they do. And if they do love what they do, they love what they do better. Besides, slaying through lots of onions. That's another conversation about another book. But anyways, for Freedom Friday, we get to have a conversation. We started on a radio show a long time ago, behind the scenes, and it's just an opportunity to have a freedom to have conversations about the meat of the subject, and the subject today is leadership. And Chris, thank you for taking the time to join us. First of all, is there anything you want to share that's on your heart to share before I ask you a bunch of questions?
I think, well, one, thank you for having me. This is a whole new thing, doing Facebook Live, like not my gig, but cool. I think the big thing, it's when we first started talking about doing this, leadership is always one of those things that has so many layers to it, that anybody who's been a leader and is still trying to become a better one, which I hope every leader is, could spend hours talking about any specific topic. So I'm excited to be here and kind of see where the conversation leads us.
And we have already done a few conversations, and one of them is on your upcoming podcast, where you have quite an elephant you take on. And we've decided from that elephant, we are going to close out this season with another conversation about it, because it was such a big elephant. And cool. So to set the stage, you have quite a bit of background. So for the audience, share a little bit about your background, your journey, and your leadership journey. When did you first know you were a leader? How has your leadership transformed over the season?
Well, okay, so I'll go all the way back to 1988. I was in the process of doing my undergrad in aeronautical engineering at the University of Southern California, and went to, at the time, what was called NSI, the Naval Science Institute, run by the United States Marine Corps in Newport, Rhode Island, for 14 weeks. And there were 50 of us that were from college in between our sophomore and junior year. And each of us had a roommate that was a enlisted individual that was trying to get into basically OCS, or become an officer. And so we were, the 50 of us were kind of the kids of the group, and the adults were our roommates. And I had a roommate who was a cryptologic technician, flew around in the back of airplanes and listened to, at the time in the 80s, mainly Russian chatter and decoded stuff. And yeah, he was cool. And so, wow. But as of the third week, I became a platoon leader, which was really rare for one of the college kids. And I, as Forrest Gump would say, it felt like being a duck in water. Like, it just made sense to me. So the military just made sense. And so I figured, hey, this is kind of unusual for a 20-year-old kid to be, a platoon leader, and feel good doing it. And I didn't, the shoulder of leadership burden didn't bother me. I liked it a lot. And then I decided not to continue with the military after that, graduated, became a structures engineer on the space shuttle while we were building space shuttles. And then in 1995, so got into management consulting, and then quickly grew a couple practices, and then started building companies, and built 4 companies, and retired in 2015. So, and from all of that, starting as even somebody who played a lot of sports, leadership, and certainly over the past 30 years, leadership has changed a lot. My father was also a Marine, was a test pilot for the Marine Corps. and was a very autocratic leader with a really heavy hand. And the times have changed, and I would have conversations before he passed away. I'd have conversations with him about vulnerability and transparency and things like that, and he would just like, I have no idea what those words mean. So I think over the time I've had to watch how my style has changed, because I definitely have a background in autocratic type leadership, and trying to, as we always said, going through the program with the Marine Corps, the best leaders lead from the side, not from the front or the back. Although, a really popular book is Leaders Eat Last. And so I think there's a lot of different things that have changed. And I think the society around what leadership has changed. Although I do believe what Colin Powell said in his book, and that is leadership is lonely. I think the fact is, if you do it right, it is, and not in a martyrish or pejorative way, but just the fact is you have to bear the burden of decisions and enabling the people around you. And I think that's changed a lot in the last 30 years.
So you said so much there. And, and the exciting thing is, what I want to clarify and then work a little deeper into is, you've obviously had a diversity of leadership experience, reading different leaders, been in different leadership positions. You've had a diversity of it. And I got to listen to one of your older presentations that we, how we started talking originally. And you've shared that. I mean, you've gone through a journey of learning how you want to show up as a leader and how you want to connect with people. And so one of the questions that I like to ask in that journey is, how did you really define and discover that, you owned being a leader? Because a lot of people, and that's one of the things I've learned that I need to start with first, because so many people don't even own the fact that they're a leader, and that we get the gift to be a leader. And so I'd be curious where that happened for you.
I think certainly some of it started in the Marine Corps, and then probably the big opening for me is at 28 years old, I was made partner in, at the time, the 7th largest professional services firm in the world, because my boss had a lot of faith in me at the time that I still am somewhat confused as to why he had it all, but he did. He had a lot of faith in me, and he gave me a lot of trust. And but he also made me own up to the decisions I made. And I think that was really where I saw stepping into being a leader and not being afraid of being a leader. I think a lot of people want the upside of being a leader, but they don't want the downside. And there is a downside. The downside is you have to shoulder the burden of the decisions you make, and you have to explain yourself a lot. And the fact is, if you're not comfortable doing that, you probably shouldn't be a leader, or you're not a good one already. And so I think the idea that I was comfortable shouldering those burdens, and I was also comfortable telling people why I was making them. And to me, one of the kind of North Stars I always thought about was, if I'm a really good leader, the people around me, 9 times out of 10 should know exactly what my decision is going to be before they even ask me. That to me is the sign of a great leader. I also think that, there's a difference between being a great leader and being a great leader that builds great leaders. I think being a great leader is hard, but being a great leader that builds great leaders is very rare. To me, that's rarefied air.
And what makes it rare?
Because I think a lot of people just struggle to be great leaders, and they think about their journey and being about them, going back to the trust equation and self-orientation. And I think they worry about so much being the best leader they can and getting kind of wringing that out, that they don't spend the time building the people around them. And so I think it is very rare to have great leaders that build great leaders.
And Chris, will you talk about the trust equation and what made that so valuable for you? Because anyone listening, when we say go back to the trust equation, we haven't brought it up yet. So yeah, we've talked about it so much that, and it's really, and I've done some videos about it now too, and it's really resonated. So share the trust equation awareness and the journey you went through with that, and then what it means in regards to what you just said about how we become leaders in that mindset, as well as how we develop others in that, please.
Sure. So one, it's from David Maister. It's not from me. It's where I read it first is in a book called The Trusted Advisor by David Maister. If you haven't read it, go read it. And really, to me, as somebody with an engineering background, trust has always been something people talked about, but it was hard to quantify or kind of visualize. And the trust equation basically says trust is the sum of credibility plus reliability plus intimacy divided by self-orientation. And the idea that each one of those components, to me, I could work on. I could work on my credibility, and I could work on my reliability, and I could work on how much intimacy I had with people, and I could work on being less self-oriented versus somebody just saying, I don't trust you, or I do trust you, or I trust you a little. How do you quantify it? And you can actually put numbers to it and run the numbers and see how I'm improving, which for somebody with an engineering or a technical background is awesome, because I can finally understand the things that I do that increase trust, or frankly, the things that I can do in those really small moments that greatly erode trust.
Mm. There's so much said there. So,
I'll start saying less. So
no, it's great. It's a wonderful, because the journey now is figuring out, okay, which way do we want to go with that? And going back to empowering other leaders. So if you take that equation, you take that and the opportunity of understanding that you can increase, improve, etc. I mean, even one of the things you talked about in the video that I got to watch previously is the awareness that that intimacy is a factor that a lot of people don't want to get their head wrapped around, right?
Yeah, it's scary.
Right? I just listened to an amazing speaker this morning. His name Jonathan Darling. I'm working to get him on the podcast as well. And he talked about the fact that they're, what does love have to do with leadership, right? And there's
it has everything to do. I mean,
everything to do with it, right?
Yeah, I'm a huge John Maxwell fan, and John Maxwell says nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So to me, it has everything to do with it.
And going back to that awareness of how you increase or decrease it, and depending on who you're focused on. So, as another coach said to me recently, if we allow our ego to be that denominator, it's going to dominate every other part of that equation, correct?
For sure, yes.
And
that is the one. Ego will keep you self-oriented. Whether you believe it or not, ego is the one thing that keeps you self-oriented. Not that anybody shouldn't have an ego, but a healthy ego is very different and controllable most of the time. So not always maybe for some of us, but the fact is, yeah, ego is the thing that keeps you self-oriented, because ego is meant to protect yourself. It is a valid thing that we all have, and it's purposeful to protect us. And so that protection shows up typically as self-orientation.
Well, and the fun part of going so many places. In regards to the intimacy aspect of connecting with people and building and empowering the next group of leaders, because ideally that's what we're operating from. We're operating from a humble confidence. We're operating from a place of wanting to invest in others and grow others, or as I like to say, guide light bulb moments, and allow them to self-discover their own equation and how they can lead themselves, right?
For sure.
That's the ideal.
Yes.
If you were to pick one specific characteristic out of all those equations, is there any one that you would say in all your journey that's been your highest characteristic, your highest skill, that you've learned to grow the most and improve your journey?
Well, I would say it's a toss-up. My first response would be it's a toss-up between lack of self-orientation and intimacy. And in some ways, those two are very connected, because if I am very self-oriented, it's actually hard for me to get a deeper relationship with you from an intimacy perspective, right? For people feel other people, whether what you say or not. And if I'm self-oriented, you're going to feel that, and there won't be a deeper understanding and a door opened to that deeper understanding. And I would say I probably worked on intimacy more, but I probably had to find my lack of self-orientation. And I think, and get comfortable with it, and get comfortable that, and I've told this story thousands of times. I was sitting in my largest client's office. This is back in probably 1997, 1998. And they were a huge company, 30, $40 billion company. They were our largest client. And the individual I had a relationship with, who was my client and my buyer, we had a great relationship. And she was paying another firm several $1,000,000 a year to do things they weren't doing. And she came to me and said, hey, would you do this work for me? And I said, sure, I would, but I got to ask the question, why would you pay me to do it when you're already paying them to do it and they're just not doing it? And she's like, because frankly, I have enough money and I'm tired of arguing with them and whatever. And I said, okay, how about I make a deal with you? You put me on the phone with the managing partner for that company and let me handle it. And she was like, that's ridiculous. Nobody's ever asked me to do that before. And so, but she did, she trusted me enough, and we got on the phone and I told the guy, I said, listen, one, you're giving the industry a bad name because you're running a professional services company and you're not giving your client what she's paying for. And she's now about ready to give me one of the largest contracts I would ever have. And the fact is, I'm here to tell you, I don't want to do it. So I'm going to give you 30 days to do it, or I'm going to take your entire business. And I don't want to do it. So I'm giving you 30 days.
Wow.
And the fact is they stepped up because it got escalated beyond that person. And the fact is they did their job and she was happy. And, I was $2.5 million poorer. But the fact is, it showed me that in those moments, the ability to see her relationship with her client as the most important helped me get to a point where what happened to me financially in the company I was with didn't matter. Mm-hmm. And the fact is, as we all know, the story, right? This always happens, is her and I ended up being very good friends for almost 15 years. I threw her retirement party for her. Her company didn't, I did. And the fact is we did $10-20 million with her. So in the end, it didn't matter. But in that moment, it showed me and it showed her and it showed, frankly, the junior leaders around me that I was willing to do things even to my own detriment if they were the right things to do.
And that is the showing up in all the different aspects of that equation, right?
For sure it does. Yep.
And so in that journey, and everyone listening, and I work to keep concise interviews, and I want to invite everyone. We'll put the link when Chris's podcast goes live in the next couple of weeks. If not, I think it might even be next week, but we'll put your link in, and then we'll have you back again for another interview, because our elephant is way deeper than the conversation we're having right now.
For sure.
And I'll open it up with the aspect of curiosity aspect is, it comes back to that concept of, how we take how we show up at our business and how we lead in our areas of skills and giftings, and how do we take that home and how do we allow it to show up for our families and everyone else, and even for ourselves, because that comes back to that sometimes. And something you just said is, you can lose that self-orientation. And sometimes, and a lot of people struggle with understanding how to have that humble confidence, that humble balance, and respect self-care, respect boundaries, respect priorities, etc., and yet also show up and invest in the other people that they allow in their life, right?
Yes.
And we could have a whole conversation around that. You never know what's next, right?
Well, and I'll tell you, just on that note, I always, when I coach a lot of veterans that are coming out, because they tend to be the least self-focused people I know, right? Given what they've done for our country and the things that they have endured and the sacrifices them and their family has made, they tend not to have any self-orientation. And so part of it is there needs to be a healthy dose of it. And what I always say is start to think about the difference between being self-centered and selfish. And being a little more self-centered is probably a good thing for that self-care and knowing what you and your family need and making those a priority, and in fact going out and demanding them, but don't be selfish, right? Don't be the person that drops on the ground and throws a fit when you don't get what you want. And so I do think there is a difference between being self-centered and being selfish.
Agreed.
And some people will say, but self-centered, self-focused, however you want to define it. My point is having some focus on yourself without being selfish, to me, is very healthy.
100% agreed. And educate us, because that leads into the next question, then we'll wrap up with one other, is in regards to the journey you've been on, and you chose to volunteer your time to help people in support of the transition. You volunteer your time a lot now. Go back to that self-centered, self-focused, self-orientation, because every choice we make has a driving force of why we do it, or what we're connected to it. What came up for you as you knew what question I was getting ready to ask?
Well, for me, I loved what I did. Building and running management consulting firms, and working with leaders, and working with, in my opinion, the best people on the planet, and helping clients do things that were really, really hard was amazing. I loved it. But it also came down to, I had sacrifices in my life and my family, and my personal life, emotionally, physically, that took a toll on me. And I was really happy that my last stint was with a company that I'm super proud to have been a part of, Slalom Consulting. And my younger son just did an internship there, and the circle of life is good. But I also thought about that it got to a point where the days that I was enjoying versus the days that I was kind of slogging through it, that balance was starting to get tilted the wrong way. And I knew there was more out there. I knew I had a calling to do something. And as we talked about in the other podcast, I started listening to the people around me more, who told me there was some gifts that I had that were really unique, that had nothing to do with management consulting. And so I started listening to those, and kind of found a path that is amazing. And it doesn't provide financial upside for me. It certainly feeds my ego a lot of times, but the amount of times that I've had people in the last 5 years that I've been retired tell me that, I'm changing lives, it's amazing. And so I think, I do think our veterans are underserved in a lot of ways. And I'm glad I can be a part of maybe trying to balance that equation out.
And you have a couple of resources that you do that with, correct?
The two main programs, one's called the Honor Foundation, and it's basically for special forces and enablers. And it's at this point 4 campuses in the US, but it kind of reaches worldwide. And then the other one is through the University of Southern California, has an MBA program specifically for veterans. It's the only one in the country. And it's really cool. It's 100 veterans a year, and it's a year-long program. And so between those two programs, I probably volunteer 1,400 hours a year. So
is that all?
It's awesome, and I love it. Yeah, it's amazing. I believe it is what I'm called to be doing right now.
And what a beautiful gift. And you get that reward of watching the growth, watching the transition, and serving, as well as having some peace of mind, knowing you're doing what you feel called to do. It's a beautiful thing.
I believe that's true. Yes.
Yes.
I constantly ask myself the question, am I doing this for my ego or because it's what I'm called to do? But I do believe it's what I'm called to do.
Well, and going back to that, self, there's a gift of somewhat self-focus, because if it's not rewarding and it's not life-giving, then it's not where we belong to begin with in most cases, right?
Amen.
So the final question, unless there's anything else that's come up that you want to share, is if you were to say to somebody, what's one little bite in their leadership journey you would recommend? Out of all the things you've been through, all the things you coach and guide others with, what would be one thing you'd say, if this is one thing you could do today, what would it be?
I would go find leaders that you see are great leaders as you would define it, and spend time with them, pick their brains, ask them how they got there, ask them who influences them, ask them things that they have learned, maybe not from books, but of course, any good leader will give you a bunch of books. But ask them things about how they got on their journey. And my point in that is, not every leader is for every leader. And so don't just go find the people that are around you that say, oh, this person's a great leader, this person's a great leader. Go find the people that really kind of align to what you're into, and spend some time with them. So like for me, one of my kind of idols growing up was Herb Keller, the original founder and president for Southwest Airlines, because of why he did it and because of how he treated his people. To me, I always thought about him as the type of person that was kind of a no nonsense, but you know, I'm going to love you, and sometimes it's going to be really tough love, but it's still love. And yeah, I you know, and so just spending time with people who interacted with him, and spending time reading about him, and spending time understanding kind of how he had that journey was really important to me. And then obviously military leaders, I've spent a lot of time around and spending time with them. And then some of them were, you know, just random. One of my best friends, Paul Yetter, his father was an engineer for years, and loved old Citroen cars. And he was one of those guys I looked up to a lot because of how he had his family and his work and his hobbies, and was just always such a giving person. So I think you just have to find those people around you.
And that's a simple matter. I met a gentleman, actually one of my clients sent me a video. He's like, this gentleman's talking just like you talk. Will you go talk to him? And ended up becoming an amazing friend. I called and reached out and said, hey, can we have coffee? And we've been friends since. And so you never know who those connections. I mean, I reached out to you on LinkedIn. I've listened to your video. Can we talk? And I 100% agree that when we surround ourselves with people that are aligned with where, and I loved how you commented on LinkedIn today, you know, we're all part of a movement and a mission, and we get to align with people that are on that same path, and see who we can make an impact with. And thank you for taking the time. And I'm positive you don't know who you'll impact or who will listen. And I'm sure it'll be the one voice, and you will be the voice that one person needed to hear. So thank you.
Hopefully that is my gift for this Friday.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. Thank you everyone for joining us. Share it. We love your comments, and we'll be back again, and we'll put the podcast link on there. You're going to want to listen. Bye everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.